Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. Got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight, tons to talk about. We got some big recruiting news to talk about, ACC Kickoff, tons of interviews to break down and get into, and outlook on the season and what the media is saying and all that kind of stuff. We're going to round that out with a BYOG or sales segment, and then we'll get to the listener comments at the end. But before we get into today's show, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. I see we got 10 people in the live chat already. Go ahead and hit that like button while you're in here for us too. Helps us out on these live videos. And then last but certainly not least, if you like what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, and more importantly on the Clemson channel, go ahead and leave a super chat feature for us during this live show. Two things: it will guarantee that your comment or question gets read and responded to right here on the live show. And secondly, it will support what me and Jordan do here, and your contributions are greatly appreciated. If you can't do that, that's okay. Hang out with us, hit that like button, get into the comment section. As you guys know, at the end of every single show, me and Jordan turn it over to you guys, and we let you guys drive the show and ask any questions that you may want to. So be sure to get into the comment section. And without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, brother?
Awesome, man. Glad to finally have a normal show. It feels like the last couple of weeks have been a little hectic for the both of us. So, I'm back home in Charlotte. Went on a little mini vacation to Wrightsville Beach. It was nice. Enjoyed my time. But now I'm back in the swing of things, and hopefully we'll be more cohesive moving forward. But man, I'm just glad to be back. We have a lot to talk about. Got a commitment this past weekend, and we got a commitment today to talk about. And as they say, recruiting is a marathon and not a sprint. And there's peaks and valleys, and even when it seems a little bit bleak and things aren't going your way, look what happens. So
there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to stay the course.
Yep.
Stay the course. Believe in the process. Believe in the coaches that we have in place, and it always tends to work out for us in the end. So we'll get into that and more in tonight's show. But yeah, man, it almost feels like this is our first actual show in a while, just because of the crazy schedule that me and you have been going through with, me traveling and then you traveling and, everything in between. It feels like we've been kind of patching these shows together the past couple of weeks, but feels good to be back in a normal setting, both me and you, and we're going to knock this show out. It's going to be a good show. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Sounds like you did. Hope everybody out there is doing well. And it is officially almost time to stop talking about college football, Jordan, and start watching some college football. Which
man. We're less than a month away. I mean, the season officially starts August 24th. Obviously, the Tigers won't play until the following week, but right. Man, I'm so ready. We're finally, this is just we're finally gearing up, and we'll have plenty of stuff to cover as far as, the preview of the season, the schedule, our official predictions. I always enjoy that when we do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. This is the time of year you really start to feel it.
Yeah, it's getting crunch time, man. We got a couple shows left until, the infamous week 0. And, us as college football fans, we talk a lot of trash about week 0 sometimes because of the lackluster matchups that they give us in the past. But again, I can't wait. I will eat up every bit of week 0 college football that I can get. I don't care how ridiculous the matchups are or aren't. That really doesn't matter to me. And you're right. We got a ton to cover before the season starts. We got to do our predictions. We got to go game by game and talk about the matchup that Clemson has, do our official predictions. We got tons of fall camp that's going to happen between now and then. News is going to come out and things that are going to happen. So we are not going to be starving for content between now and the kickoff against the Georgia Bulldogs on August 31st. So
absolutely.
It's going to be a fun ride. Hopefully all of you guys hang out and stay with us. Hopefully you bring a few more people in. Remember, guys, share these live streams around to your friends. Tell everybody about them. They don't have to be a Clemson fan to come hang out with us and chat with us on this podcast we do here on this show. Especially when we get into season, we start talking a lot more teams more consistently when we get into the season, not just the Clemson Tigers. And we welcome all the fan bases from all the teams Clemson's playing or not playing. We welcome everybody in to join in our community and talk college football, which we all love. So we got 16 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Appreciate every single one of you and your contributions to the All In Show. I'm going to give a shout out to everybody who's gotten into the comment section so far. And then, Jordan, we're going to hop into the show right after that. So then Villalobos is in here. Thank you so much. Jackson Johnson, always in here. It's one of our moderators. He's always plugging the things that we need him to plug and advertising for the voice of college football as a whole, but also our stuff here. So thank you so much, Jackson Johnson. Really do appreciate you. John Sarian, another one of our moderators, always in here early in every single show, a big supporter of what we do here. Thank you so much. Yeah. And to his point, the college football content on YouTube is going through the roof as expected as we're approaching the season. Show Out Gaming's in here. And I think that's everyone that's left a comment so far. There we go. See, I speak and he does it already. So shop the Amazon using the link. That'll help support the channel and everything we do here. So help us out with that. We appreciate that. Let me fix these graphics real quick. I do not like how these things look.
Yeah, they look bigger than normal. There we go. Yeah, I was like, they're not normally take up this much of the screen. I mean,
yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, all right. I think we're good to go now. We got everything penciled in there. So yeah, check out all those links. The Amazon link. If you guys are shopping on Amazon, all you got to do is copy and paste that into your Amazon order, and it supports the Voice of College Football. So if you guys can do that, it'd be greatly appreciated. And then, as always, give Jordan here a follow on Twitter. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you for plugging and I'm always going to call it Twitter because
yeah, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. It will forever be Twitter for me as well. But yeah, definitely follow Jordan on there. He posts stuff on there all the time. You won't be disappointed. It'll be a great time for you. But with all of that said, Jordan, we got a lot to talk about tonight. So let's go ahead and dive into the show. We got quite a few segments to get through tonight. So let's get rolling. And we're going to start with a recruiting update, right? We're going to start with Bryce Davis and Logan Anderson. I know every Clemson fan out there knows that we went 7 straight weeks without a commitment. The sky was falling. Clemson somehow forgot how to recruit. Things were falling apart in Tiger Town, all of the above, right? But again, like we said at the top of the show, Jordan, if you just stay the course, you trust the process, and you know that Clemson recruits at a high level, and they always have since Dabo Swinney has been in town, you would know that eventually that streak was going to get broken. It did this past Saturday with the big-time commitment of Bryce Davis, 4-star linebacker out of North Carolina. A big get, or not linebacker, excuse me, defensive lineman, defensive end.
Some schools were trying to recruit him at linebacker, but he'll play defensive.
He's not going to be a linebacker. He's going to be an edge guy. Sorry, I misspoke there. But 4-star defensive end, Bryce Davis, obviously went head-to-head with UGA and Duke for him, and the Tigers came out on top. That was a huge get for the Tigers. It rounds out 4 of elite level defensive linemen that Clemson's brought in this recruiting cycle. It's truly amazing that Clemson has the 5th and 6th ranked defensive linemen, and then the 6th and 9th ranked edge guys, all in the same recruiting class, all committed to the Tigers before the end of July. So shout out to Nick Eason, shout out to Chris Rump for bringing in that recruiting class right there. They're not signed yet, but what an amazing haul. And then Logan Anderson, a guy that we've been targeting at linebacker. Obviously, everybody knows Kamar Archie went ahead and got committed to Rutgers. Clemson moved on a little bit before he made his decision. I think they knew what was going to happen there. They start targeting Logan Anderson. He performed at camp for them. They really like what they saw, and he go ahead and locks in a commitment today to the Tigers. So, Jordan, tell us a little bit about how you're feeling after these 2 big recruits and that 7-week drought that the Tigers experienced coming up to these 2 recruitments.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just refreshing. Obviously, I know from an optics standpoint, it was just really, really, it was really, really, tough. I know for the fan base to kind of just be like, wow, we're really not getting a whole lot of momentum out of this recruiting weekend, and we've seen the results from the past 2. But I think that, this is massive, obviously, just for rounding out sort of the defensive class. Of course, you still have 4-star safety Jordan Young out there to kind of close out your numbers at DB. But you're putting the bows on the defensive, the defensive class, and these 2 are massive gets. You mentioned Bryce Davis from Grimsley High School, that has been sort of a source of frustration for Clemson from a recruiting effort standpoint in recent years. But this was a massive get. And, you had to overcome a lot more than I think people realized from a pull, like from a, people surrounding him sort of pull. Of course, his parents are both massive, massive Duke people. His family in general was all in on Duke. His mom works at the school, and they made it very clear that they preferred him at Duke, and there were a lot of things pulling him in that direction. And before that, of course, Georgia was heavily involved and considered to be the leader, and things changed with their class a little bit, and that made it a little bit more of a muddier picture. But Clemson was the consistent presence in his recruitment throughout the entire process. And there were a lot of things that drew him to Clemson, and everything he loved about it. He was I believe he was very close to committing when he visited in July, but of course, in June. But he wanted to continue to take the process and take his visits. But Clemson just needed to stay the course, and they did a good job, a fantastic job of just kind of staying on him and making sure that he knew that he was a priority for this class. and ultimately they won his commitment. Duke was a very, very big player. Like it easily could have gone the other way if things didn't if things broke a little bit differently. And so this is a massive get just to close out that defensive line class. And then you mentioned Logan Anderson from Fife, Alabama, a guy that's been a fast riser, has gotten a lot of offers in like the past few months. He was at the Rivals 5-star camp, and the people in attendance just noted that he looked every bit as fast as some of the smaller blue chip guys. His speed, first of all, he's a really, really good runner for a kid that's like 6'2", 220 pounds. And he also just showed a lot of great coverage instincts, really good play strength at the line of scrimmage, just everything that you kind of want in a linebacker. And so I'm really excited about him. I think he's going to be one of those that we look down later and his ranking looks significantly better. He's already a 4-star on a couple of sites, but it just depends on where you look. But I think he's got offers.
247. He's a 3-star, but he's a composite 4-star.
Right.
So
yeah,
and he'll be a 4-star before it's all said and done. I'm sure.
I believe so as well, especially as more and more people are get onto his tape because his tape is really, really good. And so Logan is a guy that just screamed Clemson kid, and now he's officially a member of the class. So really exciting, and of course. That just, like I said, it breaks that little long lull of no apparent recruiting momentum. But now you've gotten 2 in the past week, and as we go through, the All In Cookout is proceeding. Of course we've talked about wide receiver Dylan Alford, and the steps that he's taken seem to point to him eventually becoming a part of the class. And then you close the month of June, and all of a sudden, things don't look as bleak. And of course, I already mentioned Jordan Young still out there in Clemson is very much still in the driver's seat. NC State is pushing, of course, in state, but I still feel like Clemson is still in a great position to land his commitment. He plans to commit in October. We'll see whether he actually, we'll see whether he reaches that commitment date or he decides to pull the trigger earlier. But yeah, I mean, once you take all of that into account, you're like, okay, you look at the class and you're like, okay, this is a really, really solid way to close the summer, even though we missed on a lot more than we would have probably liked to. And of course, you still have the offensive line board that's going to expand as we get into the season. And there are guys that Clemson is monitoring. No official offers yet, but I think we'll have a clearer picture about what direction they're going pretty soon. So, I'm just really massive week for recruiting. Really massive week for the defense in general. Wes Goodwin, Nick Eason, Chris Rumpf doing their thing, and also they're doing some really, really good work in 2026. So Mike Reed already has his guy.
I think Jordan froze on us there.
At corner for the 2026 class, and Samari Matthews. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're there. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, both screens went black for a second, but like I was saying, Samari Matthews, I really like what Clemson has done with him so far, and Mike Reed has found his guy at corner. He's going to be a priority target in the 2026 class. So, I'm not really worried about recruiting when it comes to this staff. I think this overall, especially compared to where it was 2 years ago, this staff is, they've got some all-stars as far as recruiting is concerned, and of course, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I think you're starting to see things get back to what we were used to seeing on the offensive side of the ball as well, and I think we'll see the results of that come into fruition in this next class. So, that's my long-winded spiel on recruiting. Bryce Davis, Logan Anderson, welcome to Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good week for the staff and the program.
Yeah. Bryce Davis, Logan Anderson, welcome to Tiger Town. I think it's a really amazing way for Clemson football to kind of round out the summer and kind of it's kind of sort of putting a bow on this recruiting class, at least for the summer period, right? Now we're going to turn the page to the fall. We got fall camp. We got the season right ahead. Of course, recruiting is going to continue, but you got to be happy if you're a Clemson fan of where Clemson is as far as the recruiting process goes. We currently have 15 commits in the class. It's the 10th ranked class according to 247 Sports, right? So back inside the top 10. We're not going to stay there because, again, this is going to be a smaller class for Clemson. There's probably not too many more commits that are going to come on board. We may end up at like possibly 18 when it's all said and done. But again, not very many more commits on the way for the Tigers, but you got to feel good about where they are and who they've gotten to this point. Have we missed on people? Absolutely. Was that 7-week lull in recruiting after our big recruiting weekend a little bit painful to deal with? And was it hard to watch some guys commit to other places? Yes. But at the end of the day, the class is in a really good spot. We have 15 really good commits in this class and look to pick up a couple more throughout the season before we put a bow on this class pretty much in December because everybody knows that's the real signing day now as far as recruiting goes. It's in December. So
And plus, I mean, on three, I mean, if you look at on three, who they don't reward teams for stacking a bunch of commits
right.
as much as 24/7 Sports. Clemson is still it still has the 6th ranked class.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which shows the quality of the guys that you have in this, you have in this class. Like we said, it's not going to be a large class,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just how Clemson goes about doing things.
Yeah. When it comes to the 247 ranking, like when you got classes out here of 25 plus,
like Rutgers,
it's hard to compete with the volume that other teams are going to bring in, right? When you're only bringing in, 15 to 18 guys and they're bringing in 25 plus, it's really hard to compete with that volume with the way that 247 kind of ranks their classes. But, to your point, you go to on three, they rank it a little bit differently. More quality over quantity type deal, and Clemson's a much higher recruiting class. Regardless of how you look at it, it's a very good recruiting class to this point. I look for them to pick up a couple key more pieces. Hopefully Jordan Young's amongst those pieces that we pick up. I know there's a lot of reporting out there heading into this weekend. Obviously, the All-In Cookout is this weekend. I'll go through a list of attendees that are going to be on hand. Every single attendee that I have is a current commit -1. But the news coming out is Jordan Young will not be there. He'll be in Raleigh this weekend. Obviously, as a Clemson fan, we would like to see him at the All-In Cookout this weekend. You still feel good about Clemson's chances on getting Jordan Young. So what's kind of your reaction to some of the stories being written about him going to Raleigh this weekend instead of being in the All-In Cookout?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think NC State has done a good job with him. They've made him feel like a priority. I mean, they're the in-state school that has been pushing the hardest, and he's had a long-standing relationship with Dave Doran and that staff. So, I mean, I don't have too many reactions. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I still feel like Jordan Young. I just in my gut, and that may not mean much, but in my gut, he screams like a Clemson kid, and just everything that I've been told about him, from people around the Monroe program. He screams Clemson to me. I think there's a lot to like about NC State, and there is a legitimate draw there. So I don't want to say that he's not going to commit to NC State. But I still feel like Clemson is in the best position to land his commitment. We'll see how that changes. Obviously, their whole they just had their weekend or cookout, whatever it is, today, and they feel pretty good about what they were able to do with Jordan Young today. But I still feel like going forward, he'll have a lot of really good things to say about NC State, but I think we just got, you got to evaluate it like a week or two down the line and see kind of, once the, what they say about the visit high and stuff like that kind of wears off, kind of where things are sitting. So we'll definitely reevaluate, as we get closer and closer to his commitment. But I still really like Clemson's chances. With
I would
Jordan.
agree. Still feeling really good about where we're at with Jordan Young. But again, recruiting is a fluid situation.
You never
We'll see
know
how he feels after he goes to Raleigh this weekend. Obviously, NC State is going to fight Clemson to the bitter end to try to get that commitment from Jordan Young. He's a really big-time commit, and we're going to have to fight for him. But again, like where Clemson is currently, and although I would love to see him at the All-In Cookout this weekend, that would make me feel better. It's not the end of the world that he's going to be in Raleigh for a visit to North Carolina State. So, again, weather that storm, see what he feels like a week or two after that visit, and then we'll probably know a little bit more about really where he's leaning when it comes to his commitment to either NC State or the Clemson Tigers. So, staying with the All-In Cookout, Jordan, we got not a huge list of guys coming in town. I pulled this list off of 24/7 pretty much right before we came on, made sure there was no additional guys that had been added to this point. But again, all the guys at -1 that we're going to talk about are all committed guys. So obviously, 4-star Amir Adams, 4-star Isaiah Campbell, Bryce Davis, Grayson Littleton, Braden Jacobs, Gideon Davison, Blake Hebert, Logan Anderson, Logan Booking, Rowan Bain, Marquise Henderson, and then the one and only non-committed Tiger or non-committed recruit that will be in town for the All-In Cookout this weekend. I'm pretty sure they're all already in town as of now. I've seen them already posting on Twitter and posting pictures, and it's good to be in Clemson and all that stuff. Is 3-star wide receiver Dylan Alford. We've talked about him a few times on the channel so far, and we talked about this could be the weekend that he commits to the Tigers. I think I'm still feeling really good about Dylan Alford. This is one of the guys that we need to get to kind of really, cap off this wide receiver class and really, put a bow on that room for the recruiting class. So what are your thoughts heading into the All-In Cookout? Obviously, he's the only uncommitted guy. What do you think the chances are that we come out of here with all of those guys being committed to Clemson?
I mean, I like them for sure. I definitely think there's going to be a full court press. They really want to round out that receiver class and get kind of a true, boundary type receiver in the room. Because, I mean, you have Marquise Henderson and Juju Preston, but those guys are certainly more, especially from a Marquise Henderson standpoint, most sites list him as a running back, and that's where he played, and that's where he plays at Helton Bonilla Path.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to have a lot of a learning curve when he gets to Clemson as far as learning the position at receiver. Juju Preston, obviously a little bit more seasoned, but definitely more of a slot type, and played in a really dynamic offense. So, but you really want to have a guy that with some size on the outside. And Dylan Alford certainly fits the bill there, but he also brings a lot of schematic versatility as far as where he can play as well. So that's a really good thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a full court press, this weekend for sure. Make him feel loved, make him feel like it's like, hey, you're our guy. And we've gone through all of this. Why not go ahead and pull the trigger now? I feel like that's going to be kind of the message going in. So yeah, and like I said, we'll see how things go with the offensive line and how they decide to move forward and kind of close that out as they expand that board. But yeah, it's not the loaded cookout that maybe in past couple of years it might have been. But I think this is a massive weekend just to land that commitment and kind of close that out. That would be a really, really big deal for this class. So really excited to hear about the returns on that. They always do a good job with that every year. It's one of the highlights of Clemson's like entire recruiting season.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see kind of how that plays out.
Yeah, it'll be. I look forward to hearing kind of the chatter and the mood coming out of the All In Cookout. Again, this, if you go back probably 3 short years, the All In Cookout was the premier recruiting event for the
Yep.
Tigers for the summer. That was their end of summer, big time official visit recruiting weekend for the summer. And then obviously the addition of um, the other one in the summer kind of dwindled what the All In Cookout has been in recent years. It has kind of become secondary to that big official recruiting visit weekend at the end of May, beginning of June every single year. But again, still a big thing, still an important event to get a lot of recruits together that are already committed to the class, and then you slide a couple uncommitted guys in there and let those guys kind of do the recruiting for you, which always tends to work out pretty well. So look forward to hearing what kind of the mood is heading out of the All In Cookout, and a good week for the Clemson Tigers. Got to be happy with where we are and where recruiting is as of now. But 15 commits, top 10 class as of right now. So I think all Clemson fans can take a deep breath. The 7-week drought is over, and we're looking in much better shape than we were a week ago with the 2 big time commits that we got, and most likely at least one more on the way in the near future. So hopefully that comes to fruition. But we got 21 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have not already, please go ahead and hit that like button for us. Helps us out on these live videos. Also, if you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing, to the channel. Me and Jordan do this All In show right here every Friday, 5:30 p.m., talking Clemson football, college football, and everything in between. At the end of every single show, we turn it over to the comment section and let you guys drive the show. So be sure to stick around for that. It's always a lot of fun, and you guys always have a lot of interesting questions for us at the end of the show. But moving right along, because we got a couple more segments to get to before we get to your guys' comments. So let's move right along, Jordan. And for those of you that do not know, which I'm sure everybody in this comment section already knows, ACC Media Kickoff was this week. Teams rotated through the different days. Clemson today obviously happened to be yesterday, Thursday. They had all their interviews. Dabo Swinney talked to the media. Barrett Carter talked to the media. Cade Klubnik talked to the media. RJ Mickens talked to the media. All of our guys, had a good outing. I think everybody sounded really well, but obviously starting off with the man with the plan, head coach Dabo Swinney, kind of some of the things that the media asked him. Obviously, they asked him about the transfer portal and his approach, and does he reevaluate it every single year? And obviously he answers, yes, I reevaluate the transfer portal every single year. It depends on our roster. I get feedback from my coaches, which we have outlined in the past. And he said something interesting. Not that he hasn't said this in the past, but I think it's interesting for people to hear this, especially about the transfer portal when it comes to Dabo Swinney. He said, if I wasn't at Clemson and I took another job, I would probably be in the transfer portal quite a bit because I'd be building a new team, and most of my roster would be turning over. So I thought that was interesting. What did you kind of think about just an overview of kind of the thoughts that Dabo Swinney had, kind of his demeanor, how he carried himself in the ACC media days? I didn't really see any awkwardness, at least on camera from our view. When it came to the lawsuits, everybody kind of steered away. There was no questions about that kind of stuff. Obviously, that was probably directed towards the media to not ask those kind of questions, most likely by the ACC, as to not kind of taint the kickoff and the excitement about kicking off a new season with new teams and all the stuff that the ACC's got going on. So what were your thoughts about what Dabo had to say? Anything stand out to you? Anything that you thought was of noteworthy?
Yeah, I mean, they of course you mentioned they asked about the transfer portal and all of that, and I thought he gave a really good answer. As far as like, I'm not, some people were upset when he said, I'm not anti-portal. I believe in the young men that believe in me and the ones that I recruited and, that believe in Clemson. And everybody got all up in arms about that. Like, that's a controversial thing to say, and these are the same people that are like, man, there's no more loyalty left in college football. And the transfer portal has ruined the sport. And, it's not even fun anymore. But then you have a guy like Dabo that, does commit to the guys as that he recruits as much as they commit to him, if not more, in a lot of instances.
And you hear, I don't mean to cut you off, but you hear a guy like Phil Moffitt in his interview when he's asked something like that, and he speaks to how much it means to those guys on that roster that Dabo Swinney does kind of approach it that way, and they aren't, constantly looking into the portal and who's going to come to Clemson and all this kind of stuff. They know that Dabo believes in them, and they were brought to Clemson for a specific reason, and they're going to be groomed and they're going to be developed. And when it's their time to shine, they'll get on the field and get that opportunity. So thought it was interesting to hear some of the players' feedback on how Dabo approaches that.
Absolutely. And so I thought he gave a good answer, even though it blew up for whatever reason, and apparently it was a controversial thing. But another thing, he expressed some frustration with kind of not the transfer portal, the scholarship limits changing to 105.
I was going to mention that. I think David Hood asked the question to him, and it kind of took up all the big media time because they're kind of limited to like 12, 13, 14 minutes of media time for them to ask questions. And David Hood kind of stole the show when he asked the 105 scholarship question and what he thought about it. And he had you can go into what your thoughts on, but he had some interesting takes that I didn't really think about when I initially heard of the possible legislation coming down for essentially what it sounds like is unlimited scholarships. So basically, if they're on the roster, they have to be under scholarship. So in the coming years, what it's going to look like is if you have somebody on the roster, they have to be on scholarship regardless. So whether it's 85 or 95 or 105, or maybe the NCAA is going to set a number and it's going to be 105, or maybe it's as many scholarships as you can pay for as a program. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but essentially how he said it and how it sounded to me is it's if they're on the roster, they got to be on scholarship. So what were your thoughts on kind of the issues that he brought up with that, and what were your initial thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, I knew he wouldn't, be a huge fan of it, just as a guy that values the walk-on system that he has at Clemson. I mean, Clemson has one of the largest walk-on programs in all of college football. I mean, they recruit a lot of walk-ons. They do a lot to give their walk-ons opportunities. And walk-ons are used to be as recently as now, up until now, they used to be one of the backbones of a program that you don't really talk about. These are the guys that are your scout team. These are the guys that they are, while most of them don't end up playing, they fill out your roster, and they do a lot of sort of tertiary things that you don't even really think about if you're not a member of that program. And so it's it definitely changes the landscape a lot as far as what that means for them, and kind of the opportunities for guys that don't get a scholarship somewhere, and they want to but they want to play college football, and they're good enough to play college football, because as we've seen, there are certainly walk-ons that end up being good enough.
For sure.
For sure.
We have seen it firsthand.
Yes, we have. So, it is kind of a sad thing, and it changes a lot. And, some other some coaches will be all for this, because now it can change. It just changes how you recruit, and you can you really don't have to mind scholarship limits nearly as much.
Right.
But I think one of the things that this will create is it's just going to be another more fodder, at least for the increase in transfers over the last 3-4 years, and that's going to further increase player movement, and it's just because now it's 105 guys on scholarship. There's not enough snaps. They're not allowing more guys to play on the field. It's still 11 on offense, 11 on defense, 11 on special teams, and so you can't. There's not enough playing time for everybody. There already isn't. So now, you're just going to see a lot more movement of guys, jumping into the portal, looking elsewhere. And so now it's, that's kind of the reality. And that's going to be something that we'll have to monitor because, it's more than, I don't know if they've approved it officially, but I know they said they were very likely to when they do have that meeting.
So I don't think it's approved yet. But as far as I was looking into it, it's obviously a result of this college football lawsuit being settled, and all of that money being shelled out to the old players that and all of the players that didn't get paid prior to, and what that did was, I guess, trigger this scholarship deal. So it was kind of a unintended consequence, I guess, of the settled lawsuit that happened between the NCAA and that class action lawsuit that was brought against them. So again, it's going to be interesting. I think he brought up some interesting reasons as to why it's not necessarily, all sunshine and rainbows and all good things. I think more scholarships is, in one breath, a good thing. It can be a useful thing. But again, I think he brought up some valid points that I personally didn't think of prior to listening to him about roster management. And you bring up the walk-on piece, and maybe there's guys out there that would have gotten opportunities as walk-ons before that are no longer going to get those opportunities anymore, because some teams are probably going to choose to just stack the roster with as many big-time recruits as they can, and that's what you should do, obviously. But then again, you think about the nuances of going through a season and the preparation process, and those 20 or so walk-on guys that fill out your scout team and do all that scout team work, and all they're doing every single week is studying the opponent and trying to mimic the opponent as best they can for your first team offense and your first team defense. And if you don't have that, you could see where that can become a problem with
right. Well, the responsibility will fall on the scholarship
players. And what kind of scholarship player is going to be interested in?
Right.
I'm not going to learn Clemson's offense. I'm not going to learn Clemson's defense. I'm going to learn Boston College's offense. I'm going to learn Duke's offense. I'm going to learn so-and-so's offense. I'm going to be running their plays all year and doing scout team. And I'm for sure never getting a shot to get on the field because I'm not even, studying our offense. I'm studying the opponent's offense. So I get where that could be, tricky when it comes to managing your roster. And, you talked about the unintended consequences of increased transfer portal and stuff like that. I could see the transfer portal. It's crazy to think that there could be any more people enter the transfer portal than already do every single year. But obviously, if you have 105 scholarship players, it'd be nothing for 30 dudes to enter the transfer portal, I think. Especially if, 25 of those guys, you heard Damo mention you travel 80 players to road games. So if you have 105 scholarships and you're traveling 80 players, so 25 players are sitting at home every road game. You know what I'm saying? So that becomes very hard when it comes to roster retention and getting those dudes to buy into that kind of stuff. So I think it'll pose a bit of an issue for some coaches to get creative with how they manage their roster and how they divvy out those scholarships. And certainly another change in college football that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Should it become an official rule, which I'm sure it will.
Yeah, seems like it will be. So, yeah, and there another situation where people in the media are going to be like, Dabo's yelling at a cloud, but and then all of a sudden, when they implement this rule 2 years and 2 years down the line, and we've had a sample size and we know what effects have happened. A lot of them end up being the stuff that he was talking about and warning people about. It happened with the transfer portal, happened with the implementation of NIL. So, I just, I'm not calling Dabo a soothsayer or that he's all knowing, and
No.
because he's not the only person that has these concerns, but it seems like it riles people up a little bit more when he's the mouthpiece that message is being delivered through. So,
yeah, I mean, certainly we've talked about it on the show before, Jordan, that Dabo is certainly a polarizing figure. Anything that he says kind of gets taken to the extreme, regardless of what it is. And we've seen examples of other coaches saying similar things, and the reaction is not nearly what it is when Dabo says it.
Yep.
And that's just kind of the role that he's taken on in college football. And I think one of the reasons is obviously he's willing to say things that probably a lot of coaches are thinking and saying behind the scenes, but he's willing to say it in front of a camera. So whether that be to his detriment or not.
Absolutely. But that's the reality. I mean, he's been the coach for 15 years. He's dealt with criticism on the outside from the end, from his own fans, that he's people thinking that, asking, begging him to change. And, that's not
going to happen.
Always going to be who he is. And
yeah, it's absolutely.
That's why Clemson has been successful, is because Dabo is the way he is. And, that's what I'll never I don't get mad at people that don't like that dislike Dabo. I mean, you either like him or you don't. He's not everybody's cup of tea. But one thing that I'll never understand is people that think he's fake. I don't. I think he's as genuine as it gets when it comes to.
I think as many players and coaches have played for and worked for Dabo Swinney, if the facade that he put on was fake, I think we would have heard about it by now. Yeah. Especially with the amount of bad publicity that he tends to get in the media. Yeah. They would be more than willing to cling to a story about how, all this is fake and it's not real and all of that stuff. But Mark gets in. Thanks for stopping by, Mark. Really appreciate it. Make sure you guys go check out the main channel. Mark does amazing things over there. There's tons of teams channels. There's a ton of options here. Make sure you check out the Discord. If you love to talk about college football and you are a diehard college football fan, check out Mark's Discord. It's absolutely amazing. But he gets in and says, Dabo is my favorite coach in college football, and he's whipped my team 3 times. Nobody else can say that. That's true. You are probably correct. So you are absolutely correct.
Mark has always had a tremendous amount of respect for Clemson, and that's why it makes it hard. It makes it hard to get mad and hate on Ohio State on here, because it's like, man.
That's Mark's team, but I got deep-seated issues with Ohio State. Run with family for my thought.
Yeah.
But again, let's turn the page from Dabo and the controversial comments that I'm sure will be written about for quite a while here. Another thing that I think stood out to me that he talked about was the comm system. So obviously, quarterbacks, we get to or the offensive coordinator or whoever just deemed to talk to the quarterback obviously gets 15 seconds to be inside the helmet and speak whatever they need to communicate. So that may limit some hand signaling and things like that. Sorry for your loss, Michigan. I'm just kidding. And then obviously the tablets on the sideline. So watching plays. So just like in the NFL when they come off the field and, Tom Brady's sitting there or Patrick Mahomes is sitting there with his tablet and they slam it on the ground and throw it and walk off. Obviously colleges are going to have that ability as well. So one of the things that he pointed out, I thought it was funny. He said there will be a lot more truth telling on the sideline than in the past. Because in the past, the coaches really wouldn't know until, Monday or until Sunday when they were doing the film and breaking that stuff down, whether what the players were communicating on the field is actually what happened. So I think that definitely gives every team in college football an advantage to see the play and see the alignment of the defense or see the alignment of the offense and see how things are being portrayed out there, and definitely give certain checks and certain real-time adjustments. So what are your thoughts on kind of both the comm system and the tablets, and what effect that's going to have on college football, and then obviously Clemson as well?
Yeah, I mean, from a grand scheme of things, college football. I mean, it's a change that probably should have happened sooner. I was always enamored with the way that college football went about their signaling, and how old school it continued to be, even after the NFL had been has had a comm system for decades. But and that was kind of the charm of it. So I'm gonna miss it in a lot of respects. But I do think from a on the field play standpoint, it's going to help a ton, just from a for everybody universally. It makes things a lot easier as far as communication, and of course, not giving away your signals and not having them stolen, which Clemson certainly did a very good job of that. On their own, as far defensively, especially. So, that's something that it's not illegal as long as you're not filming people's, you're not traveling and filming other people's games and practices. But, that's a little bit different. But, so now obviously that's going to do a good, be a big part of curbing that sort of aspect. But I think one thing that wasn't really talked about, but I think is worth mentioning, and especially from the Clemson perspective, Garrett Riley was talking about how it is going to make things easier, with his communication with Cade, but not just from a play call and what he's seeing out there, but him being like calming him, and from a mental aspect, being able to be in his ear and kind of, talk him through things from a mental standpoint, I thought was something that I had never really considered before.
Right.
But I think it's massive, especially when we're talking about Cade Klubnik and how he played last year. I mean, there were certainly times where, he was, things were happening way too fast, and, he was seeing things that weren't there, and he didn't see things that he should have seen. And so I think having Garrett, having a more direct, line to his quarterback coach and offensive coordinator is going to be huge for, kind of his development, and, kind of how he'll play from a play-to-play standpoint. So I thought that was something that I think was really, really insightful. And I think it is something to watch for, because, Cade, when he's calm and he's not overthinking and not seeing, not doing too much, we saw the flashes of what he could be. I see people compare him. I saw, I think it was it Barrett Sally, or no, who was it? Oh man, it might have been Greg. It might have been Greg McElroy. I can't remember that compared Cade to Bo Nix as far as like his career, the career trajectory. When Bo Nix first became a starter at Auburn, he played very similarly to how Cade did. Very erratic. Would make some wild plays, but turned the ball over a ton. Wasn't the best decision maker. And, after his first year as a starter, there weren't many people talking. And Dabo mentioned, had talked about Bo Nix as well. Now that I think about it, not a lot of people were writing good things about Bo Nix after his first year starting. But obviously, as he got older, and of course he transferred, but at Oregon, he was a much more seasoned player, and he looked very different than what he did as a true freshman. And I think that career trajectory for Cade, hopefully it doesn't take hopefully it's not 5 years, but hopefully he has a similar progression. And the game starts to slow down, and him having another year in Garrett Riley's system, I think was something that, we've talked about a ton, but it just was a thing that was even more emphasized, yesterday. So,
I think, keeping with the interviews and talking about everything that happened in the ACC media kickoff. Let's talk about Cade and how he presented himself. And, to me, Cade looked very confident. To kind of keep right along with you're talking about, he mentioned the fact that it was a big deal for him this summer to go back to the Elite 11, to go to the Manning passing camp, he talked about being at the Elite 11 and having a chance to sit down with a guy like Pete Carroll for over an hour and just talk football and pick his brain about, stuff that Russell Wilson would do to improve and help himself. And then talking to Peyton and Eli about, things that they see and approaches that they have and mental reps that they practice off the field that translate to the football field. And Nick Foles and the big role that he's played in Cade's development with going to the same high school and stuff like that. And one of the things that stood out to me that Cade talked about, and it goes right along with what you were saying, is Cade talked about kind of how wiry he is and how kind of jumbled his mind can get at times when he's thinking about what are my teammates thinking, what are the fans thinking, what's the media thinking, and all of this stuff gets jumbled in your head. And I think that translates to the field a lot of times when you're looking at Cade play and some of the erratic things that he does on the field. And I think it's super interesting to hear him talk about it openly to the media during ACC Media Days about how he made a conscious effort this summer to figure out how to calm his mind and clear his mind so that he can truly play football free without thinking about all that other stuff that's going on. Just put it all out of your mind and just play football free. Because if he can do that and just focus on his reads and what he's doing on the field and not worry about the rest of it, Cade Klubnik obviously has the physical tools to be a really good quarterback. So I think it was interesting to hear him talk about all the people that he has picked the brain of this summer and the efforts that he has made mentally to make those adjustments that he's obviously seen that are shortcomings in his game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing we've been driving home all offseason is that we don't think it's a talent thing with Cade. I mean, and really it's not even a mechanics thing. I mean, Cade has a really good throwing motion. I mean, his footwork is not terrible. There are things, but things that he had to go, improve on as far as pocket presence and stuff like that. But his concerns aren't the same. His mental concerns aren't the same that we had with DJ, and he didn't have the mechanics, quirks that DJ had. So I mean, I think there's a lot to work with.
Right.
And last season, as much as it didn't go the way that anybody really expected, I think there still was a lot to build on. And you touched on it. It really is just about him becoming more comfortable, and just not thinking so much and not overthinking. And when he was able to play free, like we said, like he had some really really great moments last year. So it really is a mental thing and just kind of getting him more comfortable. And I think the stuff that he talked about yesterday really highlighted kind of what his journey and what his process has been this offseason as far as getting to that point. So, I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about Cade and what step he could potentially make, this season, even though, people were really riled up and kind of upset about the spring game and all of that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, spring games, as much as we try to, we downplay it a ton every year, and sometimes they end up being a precursor to what's to come. And certainly the last few years has been a precursor of what's to come, but it's not always. And when you look across the country, when TCU went to the college football playoff in 2022, their spring game was horrible. Max Duggan wasn't even the starter. It was Chandler Morris, and there were it was not a good spring game. They turned the ball over a ton. It was very ugly, but obviously they were one of the top offenses in the sport that year, and they played for the national championship. I just use them as a random example. But
Yeah.
even the 2018 Clemson, that spring game was not a particularly great spring game from an offensive standpoint. Trevor Lawrence didn't look that fantastic. He had some moments, but it was kind of a little bit of a mess. So, and obviously that offense was, one of the best in the country, and of course we know how good that defense was, and you go 15-0 and beat the crap out of Alabama, but no one would have predicted that if they had seen that spring game performance. So,
I mean, let's be honest, nobody was predicting that heading into the national championship.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everybody conveniently forgets that everyone was picking Alabama in a pretty substantial victory.
Right.
And it ended up being completely reversed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as much as we are, kind of, we feel like, oh man, Cade, after the spring game, man, Cade hasn't improved, and he's still the same quarterback. I don't necessarily think that we have enough to judge that yet, and I think he's taken the steps this offseason to eventually to take that step, but it's now about, okay, we have to see it on the field, and that's where that's how it is for anybody. But I don't think there's any reason to conclude that, oh man, Cade Klubnik's not the guy, and we've got to sell all our stock, because I'm certainly not there, and I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about what he can do, especially with an improved offensive staff and offensive personnel from last year. So.
Yeah, I think we have to remember, and one of our commenters said it in the comment section, that this was, Cade's first year. Chase Thompson in the comment section. This was Cade's first year starting, right? Last year was his first year starting, first year for Garrett Riley. So new offensive system, first year as a full-time starter. You expect the growth in year two, which is what we're heading into. And you're hearing all the right things from Cade. You're hearing he looks confident. His answers are very confident. He seems to know and be very self-aware of what improvements he needs to make personally as a player. And then hearing him talk about his wide receivers, I think, is something that really stuck out to me as well when he was talking to the media. I mean, he listed off pretty much every wide receiver in the room and talked about, their growth. He talked about a guy like Antonio Williams and the physical growth, and he was like, the dude's just on a different level this summer. He's like, a slant route from Antonio Williams right now is completely different than when he was a freshman, which is crazy to think about, because we remember how good Antonio Williams was as a freshman, and then, pretty much spent all of last year hurt. So hearing stuff like that and hearing, how excited he is and how much of a bond he's already made with a guy like Brian Wesco, right? And how excited he is to see him get on the field and produce for Clemson. And, Troy Stellato and Cole Turner and Adam Randall, and he listed off all of these guys. And you can tell, at least to me, it felt like he was comfortable, much more comfortable heading into this season than any other season before, just because of the sheer number of quality wide receivers that they currently have that are healthy, which is not something we could say a year ago or even the year before that with DJ. So I think there are some differences heading into this season that give you a little bit more reason to be optimistic with this group. Again, we got to see it on the field, but I think you're hearing the right things. Obviously, fall camp's going to be a big thing for, one, those wide receivers to work out their pecking order, who's going to run out there first, who's going to get the bulk of the snaps, and then Cade to kind of get a chance to get with this comm system in his helmet and get comfortable with that and see how he feels on the field in some of these scrimmages. I think will tell us a lot about if he's truly made that next step forward mentally as the quarterback of Clemson.
Yeah. And, when he talked about his receivers, it brought me back to to something that my guy Dustin Black over at Clemson Sports Media, y'all give him a follow on Twitter. Really, really great follow if you're a Clemson football fan. He drops a lot of insightful statistics and thoughts on the program. But he said something that really stuck with me. The fact that basically no one from this receiver room left is really, really intriguing and telling about kind of the belief internally about Cade. Because I think, as much as things didn't go, their way last year offensively, we were going into, this offseason thinking, man, there's a backlog of receivers on this team. They weren't like over the limit or anything,
Right.
but there is a lot of guys in this room and not enough snaps to go around. I really don't see how we don't lose at least a 2 or 3, to the transfer portal. And you lost 1. And Bo Collins, I think, is a little bit of a special case there. So like it really is telling kind of what the belief is internally. And you didn't lose, and you lost 1 tight end too, Sage Ennis. So you didn't lose anybody that you were expecting. You were really expecting to rely on heavily, especially in the second transfer portal window.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really telling, because after the spring, their guys will start to learn their place on the depth chart, and that's when you really find out how guys feel. Some guys feel,
Mm-hmm.
they go look for greener pastures, but that didn't happen. And I thought that, in Dustin, he said the fact that didn't happen really is instructive about kind of what they think about Cade internally.
Yeah.
Because a guy like Forrest Salato could have left a long time ago.
For sure.
And it just as an example. So I really do think there is a lot of reason and a lot of belief internally in Cade. And I think that's, of course, what you want. And, it's also probably instructive about maybe how things are going as far as, the practices are concerned, because we've only ever seen the spring game.
Right.
We're not there in practice every day to see what plays are being made, how the offense looks, how Cade has grown completely. And we'll certainly get more insight as fall camp starts to get underway. But man, I think we've talked about ad nauseum about how excited we are about this receiver room and the talent that I think this group has, and the fact that none of them left to go maybe play in a more proven offense, tells you that they think that they have a chance to be really, really special this year. I don't want to say special, but really, really good this year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I think Cade is obviously capable of taking the next step that we're talking about. And, to your point, we'll see more when it comes to fall camp and stuff like that. And, more on this offense. And I think Dabo kind of summed it up really well when a reporter asked him, how do you fix those small things, right? How do you correct those turnovers? And it's just, he said it's just attention to detail, right? And sometimes it's a little bit of luck of the ball bouncing your way. And I thought that every single player that, Phil Maffa and Cade Klubnik, I thought they did a really good job of owning those turnovers, right? They didn't shy away from it when they were asked questions. They owned those turnovers. Cade Klubnik specifically was like, yeah, I got to do better. It wasn't good enough, right? Just flat out wasn't good enough. So obviously he recognizes that. And then Dabo kind of outlined, they talk about Clemson being, good as of late, but not great, not playoff worthy, not getting into the playoff conversation and that kind of stuff. And I thought he interestingly laid it out in a way that helps people understand, I guess, the margins of college football that you fall into between being a really good program and a great program, where you're being talked about at the playoff level and the postseason level. And he talked about it was really And we talked about it in the past when kind of Wes Goodwin talked about it in his press conference just last week, right? About the red zone scoring. On offense, when we got into the red zone, we didn't score nearly enough. It felt like we were going to turn the ball over more. It was more likely that we would turn the ball over than we would score a touchdown, right?
Yep.
And then reverse on the defensive side of the ball, people didn't get into the red zone very often, but what they did, they came away with touchdowns, right? So that was one of the big things that Clemson obviously has to clean up. And then one of the other things that he outlined was big play margin, something that Clemson was really good at during that big playoff run was limiting big plays for other teams and then hitting a bunch of big plays on the offensive side of the ball, something that's been completely missing in the Clemson offense in the past 3 seasons is big plays. We just haven't seen them. They've been non-existent. And a lot of that has to do to the receiver position, the quarterback position, the offensive line, coaching. I mean, it all goes into it, right? Everybody has their share of the blame. But that's something that has to be corrected, obviously, and they want to become more explosive and then winning those close games. I think he outlined very well that those close games are what define you as a good team or a great team. And he kind of outlined in that playoff run from 15 to 20, Clemson was winning 82% of those close games. And then since then, from 21 to 23, we've won, what did he say, 65% of those games. So a huge drop-off there, right? A 20-point drop-off, essentially, of winning those close games. And that's the stuff that matters, man. And, I think all the coaches have been very transparent about what this team needs to get better at in order to get back to championship level football. So as a fan, as much as I'm still in a wait and see approach and we got to see it on the field before we believe it with this offense, I think it's good to hear the coaches pointing out some of the things that we've been saying for the past couple seasons on what's wrong with this Clemson team and what do we need to do to get back to where we as Clemson fans want them to be, which is obviously in the playoff, competing for ACC championships and ultimately national championships. So I think it was a lot of good that came out of the ACC Media Day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this team is I think this team is hungry. They know what Barrett Carter was very, very adamant about kind of how they've gone about this offseason. It's like, yeah, we have the receipts. We know what's been said about us, but they do feel like they were much better last year than their record said they were, and it just didn't come together. And I think they've attacked this all season with the mindset that we think that we're a playoff team and we're going to prepare like a playoff team. And that's what you want. I mean, and I think ultimately that's what this team's potential is. But, in order to reach it, particularly on one side of the ball, you're going to have to see those improvements, from Cade, from the offensive line, and the receivers have to live up to the expectations. I mean, we've put on some, I don't want to say lofty expectations, but we've put some high expectations on them. There's guys in here with a lot of experience. They're older now, and you've infused, and you couple that with the infusion of 2 uber talented 5-star receivers in this freshman class, and you have a room that on paper a lot of teams would like to have. And so now it's about going out there and being that, because that's just what we haven't had. We've had guys in the past 3 or 4 years that we're like, oh man, look at you look at them and it's like, man, they're killing it in practice. But then when you get to the game, it's like, oh, they're not getting separation. Oh, they're not blocking. Oh, they're not hitting, they're not catching those 50-50 balls. They're giving up on routes. They're not doing things, and things just were not what we were promised. So I don't want to say promised, but we're not what we were led to believe.
Right.
And so, we can only talk about it so much, but it is it's put up or shut up for sure. So I like what Barrett said, and as far as what their mindset is, but at the end of the day, it is put up or shut up time, especially for the offense. So
absolutely,
things have to be they have to be what closer. They don't have to be the best, the number one offense in the country and score 45 points a game, but I'd like a 35. That'd be Clemson scoring 35 points a game with this defense. That should be enough to win 10, 11 games.
Yeah, it's tough to beat.
Schedule. You really only have one. There's really one team that I legitimately think just is flat out more talented than you, and everybody else is extreme. And I'm not even ruling out that you can't beat that team, as we've talked about. And then everybody else, including Florida State, I think is very beatable. So you just if you can get that sort of production, this team should be an ACC championship team, college football playoff team. Not ready to go as far as national championship or anything like that. I'm not sure that's what the ceiling of this team is. But we get back to what we were used to seeing, 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting back to and winning an ACC championship, I think is the mark for a successful season. Then obviously competing in that 12-team playoff. Not saying you're going to go run through it and Clemson's going from 9-4 or whatever to a national championship. I'm not saying that at all. But I think getting to an ACC championship, winning that, and then competing in that 12-team playoff and looking like you belong is definitely where this team could end up towards the end of this season. And you bring up Barrett Carter. That dude I love that dude, man. Like, that's the heart and soul of that Clemson defense. And
absolutely.
And I just like how he approached the media and how he was very matter of fact about how the defense felt. And, we see what you say. We keep the receipts. We know what everybody says about Clemson. And you can tell that there's a hunger there to change that narrative. And most people, if asked about Clemson, wouldn't even put the defense as a part of the problem at Clemson. But you like to see that shared responsibility that the captain of your defense he's not throwing the offense under the bus. He's saying, we as Clemson, we see what you say, and that eagerness to correct that. And you can tell that the preparation this offseason has been a little different than last season, because you remember Barrett Carter talking after that Duke loss and how he didn't feel like he was ready for that season, right? Felt like he was a little out of shape, felt like he, Clemson wasn't prepared, which is inexcusable, first and foremost. Yeah. I remember us having this conversation after the Duke game, hearing this kind of stuff.
That post-game show, man.
That post-game show was crazy. If you guys –
and we did it on the main channel too, didn't we, with Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. We simulcasted it on the main channel with Mark. If you guys ever are just – excuse me, completely bored and have nothing better to do, you guys should go back and watch that post-game show, because me and Jordan were absolutely beside ourselves, and hearing some of the stuff that was said in post-game interviews and stuff like that just did not help. And that was one of the things that kind of Barrett Carter referred to. So hearing how different his approach is heading into this season and how different it's been over the summer, and I'm sure that's echoed through several other members of the defense, it's encouraging because we all know what kind of defense this group of individuals could end up being come season's end. Yeah. They got the potential and the talent to be something special. And you even heard, the coaching staff talk about, how they weren't satisfied with last season. And although they turned in a pretty good defensive performance, they weren't satisfied with it, and they need to get better.
Yeah. And that's just exciting to see from, especially from a guy like Wes Goodwin, just being as green as he is, as being a defensive play caller. And we've seen him, just get better and better. And his defense was, 2022, the defense was, they won a lot of games. They were pretty good, but they gave up a ton of big plays, especially through the air. And they just, it wasn't quite what we had hoped, as far as the production was. But he went back into the lab, and last season we saw, massive improvements across the board. And they were top 10, top 5 in most categories. If it wasn't really for the turnover issues on the offensive side of the ball, those numbers probably would have looked even better.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked about it last week. I'm really excited to see what his growth is in year 3, because
Mm-hmm.
I think he's officially, he's established his identity and himself as far as what he wants to be as a defensive coordinator, as a coach, and now I think as a recruiter as well.
Yep.
And so now I have really high expectations for him in year 3. So
yeah, and I think it's now unquestionably his defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's made his stamp, and we see what his identity is as a play caller, and that's really, he was the hire that we weren't we weren't really sure about, as far as the shoes that he had to fill, the fact that he had never called the defense before. It's like, man, yeah, he learned under Brent Venables, and he's supposed to be this defensive genius, mastermind sort of thing. And he has this photographic memory and all the things that, he worked with Bruce Arians, and Bruce Arians was extremely complimentary of him and all that. But we were like, we barely knew his name.
Yeah.
And he was a unknown commodity, for most fans, unless you were really diving into the list of analysts that we had. So
yeah,
but now I think he's established himself as one of the top coordinators in college football, and I think he's really going to put his stamp this year. So but that's enough about the defense. I also like that the defense, Barrett Carter himself was complimentary of the offense, because it's one thing for the offensive guys to be like, yeah, we're going to be really good. But when the defense is talking about the offense, the way Barrett was, the guys that go up against it every day, that makes it, it's a little bit more impactful for sure.
Absolutely. And you see the respect that he gave to Cade Klubnik, and, his obvious effort that he's put in to become more of a leader and to involve himself and get to know his teammates a lot more. So gave Cade a lot of respect in that fashion as well. So lots of good stuff coming out of ACC Media Days. None of the drama that I'm sure everybody was looking for. I'm sure everybody was waiting for the lawsuit to be brought up and things like that. I do know the commissioner back on day 1 obviously mentioned the lawsuit, and obviously wasn't real happy about Florida State and Clemson suing the ACC. But again, outside of the ACC commissioner mentioning it on day 1, I don't remember hearing any other mention of the lawsuits or anything like that during interviews.
Absolutely. All right.
All right, guys, we got 27 people here in the live chat right now. If you have not already, please hit that like button for us while you're in here. And also while you're in here, consider subscribing to the channel. Me and Jordan do the All-In Show right here every Friday, 5:30 p.m., talking Clemson football, college football, and everything in between. We also get to your comments at the end of the show and let you guys drive the show, and that's always a good time. So if this is something that you like, please hit that subscribe button and bring a couple friends along with you. We are trying to grow the channel. We most recently just went over the 5,000 subscriber mark. So if you can continue to help us grow, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, we got one more segment, and then we're going to get into your comments and let you guys drive the show at the end of the show. Obviously, we can't get to all the comments. So if you want to ensure that your question gets read and responded to on the live show, hit that super chat feature for us, so that you ensure that happens. And then 2, you support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show. All and any support is greatly appreciated. So thank you guys for that. And without further ado, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into the last segment before we go to the comment section. And that is none other than our newest segment to the All In Show, which is BYOG or sell. This is a segment where me and Jordan bounce off various situations, whether it be about Clemson or college football or whatever the case may be, and say whether we're buying or selling. Of course, we call it BYOG for obvious reasons. If you're a Clemson fan, just go back to that Notre Dame game, the Hurricane game back in 2015. One of Davo's infamous post-game on the field interviews where he said BYOG, bring your own guts. So that's why we dubbed it, or that's why Jordan dubbed it that. And we have done this segment for probably, 3 or 4 weeks now. So,
yep.
Jordan, you want to kick us off tonight?
Yeah, I will. I think we talked about the receivers. I'm gonna hit you with a question. BYOG or sell. We're going to be talking more about Cole Turner at the end of the season than Adam Randall. BYOG or sell.
Ooh. I'm going to sell. Not because I don't believe in Cole Turner or his ability to be an impact player for Clemson this year, but that's how much I think about Adam Randall and the season that he's about to have. I really do think Adam Randall's about to have his breakout season. So for that reason, I will sell, but make no mistake, I 100% believe Cole Turner will be a big contributor for this team this season. You will see his effect on the field in various ways this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wanted to hit you with that question because we've talked about this receiver room, and we think the two biggest wild cards are those two. From Adam Randall, just the uber talent that he has from a physical standpoint, and what just translating that into being that true boundary, big time outside threat. And then Cole Turner, being one of arguably the fastest player on the team and being a big play threat on his own, and him growing into the position as a third year player. They both, I think they have the most mobility as far as where they potentially end up in the pecking order here. We could see one of them, both of them have really strong years. We could see neither one of them be all that successful, or one or the other has a big year, and none of it would surprise me.
Yeah, I think the distance between those two's floor and ceiling is the greatest.
Yeah,
obviously. So that was a good one. All right, I'm going to keep it with the wide receiver room, and I got one for you. Now, this in particular has happened for 2 straight seasons. So BYOG or sell, a freshman wide receiver will be the leading receiver come the end of 2024. Oh. I didn't name a name. I just said a freshman wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, there's only two.
There's only two
you can go with,
but I didn't want to narrow it down to one. I just wanted to go with a freshman wide receiver will be Clemson's leading wide receiver in 2024.
You could, man, that's a good one because I spent last week, raving about. Oh man, that's a tough one because you could tell me that either one of the freshmen is Clemson's leading receiver, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Right.
But then again, I'm going to sell. But just because I think Antonio Williams is going to be that good this season.
Yeah.
I've kind of set my mind on Antonio Williams is the guy, the go-to guy this year for Cade and for this offense, and a lot of the passing game, between him and of course Jake Brenningstool at tight end. I think that they're going to drive a lot of the opportunities that everybody else gets. So yeah. I'm going to sell, but I would not be shocked if Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore was Clemson's leading receiver, this year. But I'm buying into the Antonio Williams hype. We know what he is when he's healthy, and the fact that he's even better I can't pass on that. I got to go with Antonio Williams.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I would sell on that as well for the exact same reason, and that is Antonio Williams. There's a reason when we did our wild card segment that Antonio Williams was my wild card. Everybody's forgotten about Antonio Williams up until Dabo Swinney started talking about him, right? And kind of hyped him up and said how well he was doing. But, we all know what Antonio Williams is capable of, and just hearing how he's attacked this offseason in preparation for the upcoming season, I'm 100% on board with you. I think he's going to be the go-to guy this season for the Clemson offense. But again, it would not surprise me. I thought it was it's been 2 seasons in a row that freshmen have been the leading wide receiver. So
yeah,
I don't think it's year number 3, but we'll see.
It could happen. Ronald says
it could happen, but I don't think.
Yeah, Ronald says sell if so we're in trouble. I disagree. I mean, I don't think a freshman coming in and being your leading receiver is the worst thing in the world. Maybe go back to the 2018 college football season and go look at the receiving statistics. Just let me know who you find and what year they were.
Yeah.
Having a freshman be your leading receiver, it doesn't really tell you much, especially because I think receiver is such a unique position as far as like there are some receivers that come in and are just that flat out that good. That a lot of guys, especially when you have these 5-star, a lot of them are really easy to plug and play. It's a very easy. It's one of the easier positions to transition from high school to college, because it really is just about your traits and your athleticism. You can't teach speed, and you can't teach like route running and stuff like that, and the nuances, sure. But if you're good enough and you are a good enough athlete, you're going to play at most places. And so, especially if you're a 5-star, there's not many schools that are just out here holding holding their 5-star receivers, unless you're like Ohio State and you just get like 3 of them every cycle. So like, I don't think that's necessarily if like Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore ends up being Clemson's leading receiver, I don't think that's instructive about how good the offense was. So I don't think so. I don't think that's necessarily the case. He says that those freshmen were good because we had a generational quarterback. Don't think we have one now. I don't think those two things are related. If we're talking about, you think Justin Ross wasn't that good, or are you saying that Justin Ross just flat out wasn't that good and he was a product of having a great quarterback, or what? I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying, because Justin Ross would have gone anywhere in the country and been really, really good, especially when he was healthy. So I don't think so. I don't think that. I'm not, because I made the comparison to 2018, not to say that if a freshman leads the team in receiving, we're going to win a national championship. I'm saying that a freshman being your best receiver is not necessarily instructive about how good your receiver room is or how good your offense is, because some of them are just flat out. Some of them flat out are just that good. I think Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State is that type of player where, like, I think he's going to be their leading receiver, because he's just that. Especially I think he's one of the better receiver prospects in the last few years. So not every freshman receiver is created equal, but I'm saying that I don't think it's necessarily you have to have a generational quarterback, and Ohio State certainly doesn't have a generational quarterback this year. Well, I wouldn't categorize Will Howard as that, but I think Jeremiah Smith is that good, and I think that both Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore have that, not that sort of potential, but they have the potential to be Clemson's best receiver, and it not be a product of the rest of the guys that weren't what we had hoped they would be. It's that those guys are just that good. But that's me. But I don't think that that would be a terrible thing. All right, sorry, that was a long-winded one. It's my turn, right?
Yep, your turn.
Okay. That was the only one I had prepared. The first one was the only one I had prepared, so I got to think about it. I'm going to, okay, BYOG or sell. David Ajumame factors his way into the running back rotation this year.
I'm going to go buy. BYOG. I'll buy that David Ajumame somehow works his way into a significant playing role this season, I think. Excuse me. We talked about in the past, there's an obvious hole to be filled by someone not named Phil Maffa, right? Obviously, we know what we have at RB1. I think there's a kind of jumble of backs after Phil Maffa. Jay Haynes is one that we've talked about on length on this channel, and he just hasn't been healthy. And he got banged up again in the spring. So it gives me pause to kind of, although I think his talent and his skill set lines up perfectly to be that change of pace back for Phil Maffa, I just don't know if he's going to stay healthy. So I could certainly see a guy like Eazy-E working his way into that rotation and making a little noise this year. So I will go BYOG on Eazy-E.
Okay, I'm on the sell side of things, but I'm really intrigued because he had the biggest like curve to get through, as far as him coming in. But being an early enrollee, I think absolutely helped him a ton. So I'm really intrigued to see kind of how what we hear about him in fall camp, because I know reading the tea leaves, it feels like if they can redshirt him that they would. But if he does, make that leap, is he I don't expect him to be like a major player, but as another change of pace back, like I don't know, wouldn't surprise me.
I'm not saying he's going to be like second on the team in carries, but
right,
he could definitely play a role this season.
Yeah. And because we've talked about what they like about Keith Adams and what the potential Jay Haynes has, and those two seem to be the ones that are kind of standing in the way of him getting real playing time.
Right.
But I don't know. It just, especially since we can't rely on Jay Haynes' health as of now, and
right.
I don't know. Keith Adams is kind of he doesn't, as far as a change of pace, it's not as drastic as maybe some of the other guys. So I don't know if things break his way, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I could see it happening. A couple commenters are talking about Jarvis Green as well, and that's obviously an option.
I'm not as sure. I think the thing with Jarvis is that I'm not. I think he's a very natural at the position. They have talked about it ad nauseum, but obviously the big question with him was always the speed. It just wasn't. It's not great. And so I just, we haven't seen him a ton, carry the football a ton at Clemson. So we really don't have anything to go off of. I loved him in high school, and I thought it was a nice late take, because he's just a very good football player.
Mm-hmm.
But if some of the other guys bring a better athletic profile, will they actually give him an opportunity? I don't know. Yeah, at least not this year. But maybe down. I think a little farther down the line, I could see him factoring in. But I just I don't know. We'll see. And it doesn't help that, you've got Gideon Davidson coming next year too. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sure about the long-term prospects for Jarvis, as far as him being a actual contributor for Clemson, but we'll see. Your turn.
All right. I got one. So I'm gonna move over to the defensive side of the ball and leave the offense there for a little bit. And I'm gonna go to sack totals this season. Okay, so there were two guys tied for sacks on the defense last season. And that was actually, it was two guys tied for sacks last season. That was Jeremiah Trotter and TJ Parker.
Yep.
Followed by, I think, Ruka Rororo and then Barrett Carter.
Yep.
So Jeremiah and TJ Parker each had 5.5 sacks apiece last season. So BYOG or sell. I think this is going to come down to maybe Barrett Carter and TJ Parker, but BYOG or sell. TJ Parker leads the Tigers in sacks come the end of 2024.
Oh.
Now remember, you got Peter Woods over there.
Yeah, you got Peter Woods over there.
You got Barrett Carter.
Wade Woodaz is I don't think
Wade Woodaz is an athlete.
He brings as a pass rusher.
Yep. They've talked a lot about Jaheim Lawson, his pass rush ability. So maybe he could be some sort of pass rush specialist this season. But
I'm going to say BYOG. I'm going to say BYOG, but I think, I didn't, wasn't great hearing the stuff about TJ Parker this offseason. As far as kind of getting out of shape and stuff. So I hope he's, I hope he's fully corrected that. I know that's something Chris Rump, got on him for.
Yeah, locked back in. Yeah.
But if he's locked in this year, then absolutely. I mean, he showed a lot of promise as a freshman. He's not perfect, but I think year two. You have to expect that improvement as long as he stays healthy. So yeah, I'm going to BYOG because I just think he's going to get the most snaps, I think, of anybody at the position.
Yeah.
And he really is a natural pass rusher. Just pretty. He was pretty far ahead, for true freshman last year, and that improvement. You can only expect him to get better, especially with a new position coach that I think has a lot of experience with guys like him.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll say BYOG, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Barrett. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if it was Barrett Carter. Wouldn't surprise me if it was Peter Woods. And Wade Woodaz, I think, like I said, Wade Woodaz, I think, factors into that a lot more than I think people realize. I mean, he's a really good pass rusher.
Yeah, I don't know if Wade Woodaz gets enough love.
Yeah,
gets the love that he deserves.
Yeah.
He's a heck of a football player, man. He's just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's all over the place. He's relentless in his pursuit of the football.
And him playing at Mike and kind of being more in the box, I think definitely will give him some more opportunities as well. So
yeah,
I think that's exciting.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave that there, Jordan.
Yeah.
We'll wrap the BYOG or sell segment up, and we are an hour and 45 minutes in, everybody, and we got 39 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys for hanging out with us this long. Really do appreciate you. If you have not already, again, hit that like button for us. Really helps us out on these live videos. Also, consider subscribing if you have not already. But what we're going to do now is we're going to transition to the comment section. And we are going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So now's your time. Get your comments in. If you would like to guarantee your comments read, go ahead and hit that super chat feature for us. Help support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show. Make sure you're supporting all of the Voice of College Football. Obviously, the main channel, everything that Mark does over there. You got various teams channels. You got conference channels. You have a ton to choose from. A lot of good shows out there. So go check them out. Obviously, you got the Discord that Mark has over on Discord talking about college football.
Which is available through the Patreon, by the way.
Yeah, so available through Patreon. And he'll put, I mean, there's picks on there that he puts like heading into football season. I'm not telling you to gamble, but if you do sports betting at all, I promise you, you want to be a part of that because Mark's going to give away a lot of free chicken in there, and you're probably going to end up winning some money, at least if we go off of what has happened in the past with Mark's picks that are pretty good. And he brings on people that are very knowledgeable in that betting world as well. So go check out that Discord, check out the Patreon, support Mark, and by supporting him, you support what we do here because we wouldn't have this platform without him. So appreciate Mark and everything that he does for this show and giving me and Jordan this platform. And without further ado, let's get to the comment section, Jordan.
Let's do it, man. All right, has some starred. Let's hit some of those because you guys have been really going at it in the comment section today. So
yeah, they've been tearing it up in there today.
Yeah, love it. John said earlier in the show, he said, I think Dabo should start charging media outlets a promotion fee. They make a lot of money writing articles about what he says. He supports so many of them. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. Every time they put him in front of a microphone, especially in a national setting, it's sound bites and quotes and things that he said are going to be a topic of discussion. Whether they're really all that controversial or they are, it doesn't seem to matter. Ronald says there was another arrest of a Georgia player today. Do you guys think all the recent arrests of their players will work in our favor as we approach game time? I mean, work in your favor. I guess, sure. I mean, in a way, the previous ones I don't think are going to affect it all that were going to affect the game all that much. But I think the one today with wide receiver Ra Thomas, that one seems to be a little bit more serious. Kirby said that he's been suspended indefinitely. At least, well, that was a statement from Georgia that Kirby Smart had suspended Ra Thomas indefinitely. Some very serious charges. I don't know if we'll get demonetized if we talk about it, so I won't. I won't say it.
Everybody can go look up the charges, but just by the language of the charges, it seems very serious.
And it's not the first time it's happened. So
don't know the backstory, don't know what happened.
Don't
know the details, but just judging by the charges, not good at all.
And Ra is a talented football player, transferred from Mississippi State. He showed promise at times last year. I think one thing that they had noted, Georgia people had noted was that he had some issues throughout the year, kind of picking up the offense, but he showed some really nice big play ability, and he was a kind of a breakout, circled as a breakout star for them this year. So I think that is a big deal because he was going to factor into that wide receiver room. I think he caught 29 passes and for 300 something yards last year. So, it's not like he was unproductive. And he was a guy they were expected to have a kind of a breakout season, like I said. So, if he doesn't play in the game, that's, that certainly will affect kind of how that game goes and what they do from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, I think definitely he was looking to play a pretty significant role for them this season. So unfortunate. I don't take any joy in them having players arrested, and that
this is not how I would want
helping or not helping. Clemson win the game. Like I rather beat a team at its full strength, and certainly because of the nature of his charges, I'm not taking any victory laps with this at all. Really unfortunate situation. That's really all you can say about it. But with Georgia and all their speeding and all that stuff, yeah, it does seem to be a trend at Georgia. What they're doing about it, I have no idea. It does seem to be a significant problem because of the sheer volume that it's happened there, but I don't think any of those affect the Clemson game.
Yeah. Still, I mean, regardless of what happens, it's going to be, the toughest team you play all year. It's going to be the toughest game you play, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself, whether, they have, everybody playing or they have guys that aren't. It's still. So, I'm not going to think about that aspect, too much as we talk about that game. Chase asks a question. He says, how did y'all get started doing this? Been told by friends and family I need to start doing this with how passionate I am for Clemson football. Well, yeah, I mean, I always say that, if you're passionate about something, you need to pursue it. And, in our case, it really was just, Mark, kind of put out that, hey, I'm looking for guys to, do the Clemson live show on the main on the Clemson channel. And, I had some, both me and TPC had some experience with our own, YouTube stuff, doing like many YouTube videos. I had a podcast that I did with, it was kind of a college football podcast. And so we had some experience talking Clemson and college football. And we were like, hey, we had gotten to know each other through the YouTube community, multiple YouTube communities. And we were like, hey, man, like we should totally do this.
Absolutely.
And so we were just like, hey, I think we do a great job. And that's really how it started. It just kind of you just kind of got that opportunity, and we decided to jump on it. So, but you don't even need to do that. You can, like I said, like you can create your own channel, your podcast, and start it. And so, and we've had the great fortune to know a lot of Clemson YouTubers who have just kind of started on their own and by scratch and just kind of build it to where they were. We've had of course we've been on shows with Brian, otherwise known as Bobby Durkins, and Pigskin Pete.
Yeah.
And so it's I think you should go for it, Chase, if it's something you really I know it's hard to do because it's it's time consuming at times and scheduling wise, as you've seen with us, but I definitely think if it's something you're passionate about, you should do it.
Yeah. I concur with everything Jordan just said. If you're passionate about college football, you're passionate about Clemson football, just jump out there and do it. I know before me and Jordan started doing the show, obviously we did stuff on our own channels. My channel wasn't particularly big at all. I think to this day I only have like 20 subscribers on my personal YouTube channel.
Yep,
I don't post anything over there, so obviously I'm not going to gain any subscribers. I don't really do anything over there, not because I don't want to, just because I've committed to doing this show, and with a full-time job and a family, it's kind of hard to do anything else. So I focus all my energy here, and this is what I enjoy doing. So I would say just jump out and do it. I started my YouTube channel probably a year prior, the season before me and Jordan started doing stuff here. And like Jordan said, it was a post that Mark put out, and it was towards the beginning of that season, towards fall camp. And he was like, hey, anybody willing to do a weekly, post-game show about, Clemson? And I said yes. And then, I was like, I need some, I said yes. Jordan said yes. We used to have a couple other people on the show, and they just kind of organically fell off. And, me and Jordan just kind of stuck with it and stayed the course.
We had a good thing going, and we were like, let's keep it rolling.
We got better at it together. We're far better today than we were when we originally started. I'm sure you can go back and see some of our videos and be like, man, that's kind of rough. It's okay. We've gotten better, and there's still things we can improve on, and we'll continue to do that. But the long and short of it is just do it, man. Just do it. Absolutely. Just go out there and do it. I started just my YouTube channel with my phone, and I would, do halftime reactions and post game reactions to Clemson's games, and it just happened to be the season where it all started falling apart for us. So very many happy videos. There was a lot of me ranting on there, but again, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy what me and Jordan have here. We kind of built this. Show together, and it kind of happened organically, and we built the chemistry up, and I think we got a good thing going. So, and we just, and like I said before, super grateful to Mark for giving us this platform and this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without this, me and Jordan wouldn't be sitting at over 5,000 subscribers right now. Without the platform we were given, I think we would have a significant amount of subscribers, but being a part of the Voice of College Football definitely makes it a little bit easier. With all of the stuff that they do. We do this live show every week, but they're posting videos and cutting up our live shows and doing all that stuff in the background. So there's a lot of
course, of course, and we always have, and we have other Clemson creators like Pigskin Pete has been on the channel.
Yeah.
Jason Priester.
Does
a lot of weekly content with Mark on Clemson in regular video format that's posted on here as well. So, I think it was a great thing that we've gotten the opportunity to be a part of. So
yeah. But yeah, I would encourage you to just do it. Don't even. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just start posting videos.
Yeah,
and see how it goes.
You can post, just get in your car and that's how I've seen, and not just Clemson YouTubers, but I've seen a lot of just sports and football YouTubers that started out that way, just posting videos from their car, driving on their way to work, and just giving their thoughts.
That's where I filmed every single one of my videos on my channel. You can still go back and see them. I haven't deleted any of them. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are okay. But it's me driving in my car, either on the way to work or back from work or, whenever. So just do it, man. You won't regret it. If you're passionate about college football and Clemson football, you won't regret it. And it's fun just to be surrounded by, people like you in our comment section that are just as passionate as we are. And I can speak for me and Jordan both. It makes the off season way more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it goes by super fast.
Yeah. It's flown by for me. And it's helped me just kind of, stay, you and I both, it's helped us just kind of stay in tune. Cause sometimes, with life, you get caught up and,
Right.
It's sometimes it's more stressful that way when you are, as tuned into the program as we are, especially when, something negative happens, but it also, makes the off season a lot more enjoyable as far as the weight and all of that. So, yeah, but yeah, man, if that's something you want to do, you should totally do it, because it's a very fun experience. Even, just being on camera and talking about something you enjoy, there's nothing like it. Byron says, "What's up? I finally got to catch y'all live. Thanks for bringing it every week." Well, thank you for joining us, Byron. We are happy to have you, man. I always love when we have somebody that catches on the rewatch that gets to join us for a live. So, we're always trying to build the live stream audience, because you guys help drive the show. So the more the merrier.
Shout out to Byron and the Rewatch gang. Appreciate you, man. Really do.
Absolutely. Brandon Rowland says, "I disagree with the talent part. I think with reference to Cade and DJ, he says DJ had more arm talent and was more physically gifted. Cade is highly talented, but he's more accurate, skilled than DJ. Cade excels at the basics better than DJ." Well, I think when we say arm talent, I think a lot of people just kind of default to arm strength and just how far you can throw a ball. I think if we're talking about how far, both of them can throw the ball, obviously, DJ is going to win that, 10 times out of 10 every day of the week. But, arm talent is more about, how well you can layer your throws, the velocity, the RPMs, just the natural flick, stuff that stuff that's not so much about how far you can throw, but just things that factor into how well you can place your throws and how accurate you are, and the zip that you put on the ball. Like those things are kind of those things are kind of more important, I think, than as far as how far you can throw a ball. Because Joe Milton has one of the strongest arms I've ever seen, but was not a good quarterback at all. And so, like, I think I think that DJ and Cade have tremendously talented arms, but for different reasons. So I don't want to say one's like more talented, like more or less talented than the other. I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses, which I think you hit on, but I don't think I wouldn't say it's a, arm talent, like DJ has the edge. I think both are tremendously talented as far as their arm goes, but there's more to it than, how far you can throw it. Okay. Byron also says, I ain't saying he don't need to improve and that the mistakes didn't cost us. And 100% he has to show growth, but he wasn't just the one who turned the ball over. In reference to Cade, yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality. I mean, it was a system failure last year. I mean, Cade had a very large share, but it certainly wasn't just a Cade problem last year for sure. Just like it wasn't just a DJ problem when he was here. And so, there were things that had to be better. The receivers, at times they got open, but there, other points in the year they didn't. And, they couldn't stay healthy. The offensive line, that they couldn't stay healthy, especially on the interior. And so now so there were a lot of things that factored into it. You had the fumbling issues from really both your running backs at times. That didn't help. Lapses in pass protection. We can go on and on about the issues that plagued this offense. It was the staff described it as just playing 10 on 11 every snap, because one guy was not doing what they were supposed to, and it made everything else not work the way it was supposed to. And so that's kind of that was kind of the reality. Sometimes that was Cade being the one guy not doing what he was supposed to, but sometimes it was other guys. So that's the reality. But Cade, as the quarterback, absolutely his improvement is the most important when we're talking about the success of this offense. So I don't want to undersell what Cade needs to be this year in order for this offense to get to where we want it to be. But I also don't want to lump it all on him and say that, he was, this whole catalyst for why things were rough. All right. John asks, you think AJ Hoffler will be the breakout star on D this year? He's getting hyped by coaches right now. I mean, I think he's one of my top choices. I've got him circled in. I think year one, he just had a transition to go through and kind of get there physically. But now I think he's as impressive as anybody in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you want to talk about a highlight from the spring game? That's the guy you would look at. I mean, 99 was
flashed so much, man,
all over the place.
Even when he wasn't like stacking the court, when he wasn't getting sacks, he was
right. You felt his presence on the field when 99 was on that field during the spring game, and you hear all the hype and the good things that the coaching staff is saying about him. So I absolutely believe in. And you heard Chris Rump when he was interviewed, and he talked about how Dabo came to him and was like, "Hey, we lost a guy. Do we need to go to the portal?" And he said, "No, I believe in these guys. that I have in my room. I don't think we need to go get anybody. And a guy like AJ Hoffler is one of those guys that he's referring to, that he believes in and that he thinks he can develop and get to the point where they're a big contributor along this defensive edge. And that's going to be a big deal because, TJ Parker and Peter Woods, as great as those two players are, they can't be out there every single snap. Just not possible. It's not practical at all, especially when you're talking about playing as many games as college football is going to go to playing with the 12-team playoffs. So, should you make it to that far,
right?
If there. I definitely think AJ Hoffler is a guy to watch along that defensive edge, as a guy that could definitely carve out a significant spot in the rotation. Obviously, TJ Parker and Peter Woods are going to be your first two to run out there every single time, barring injury. But the relief guys in the rotation, he could definitely be a major player there.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to see him on the field. And I think he's a guy that nationally, obviously, is not going to get a lot of attention, but I think people, I think he'll be on more people's radar. By season's end. Ronald says, I hope our first play is an inside run with Phil running for 10 physical yards, setting the tone that we can match up with you up front. Now, that would be fun. Like, we've talked – I've talked about, with Clemson people, it's like, man, wouldn't it be great if we just hit a bomb over the top to start the game or something? But, it would be just as cool to see Clemson, line up with Georgia's defensive front and run the ball on them, first play and get a nice chunk. Because I think that's just as important. That would be just as important of a tone setter because, Garrett's offense is every bit as much about explosive plays as the run game. And you need both of those. And establishing that run and establishing that physicality with a team like Georgia that is as physical as there is it gets in college football, that would absolutely set the tone. And I think, you have movers on your offensive line this year. Like you have guys with the size to get that kind of push. And if they play with that sort of mentality, that would be certainly something to see and would give you some, it wouldn't tell you everything about how the game is going to go, but it would be a good tone setter, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and it will be a breath of fresh air for this offensive line to be able to demonstrate that they can be physical and move a defensive line of that caliber, right? Because you go back and watch the last time Clemson played Georgia, and there was zero movement, not a centimeter.
How many yards did we rush for in that game? I think it was like 6.
Yeah, it was
literally 6 yards.
It was definitely single digits. There was literally zero offense in that game on both sides of the ball, mind you. But just talking about Clemson, we couldn't move the ball. They couldn't pass block. It was like water rushing through a screen when it came to our offensive line trying to block that defense the last time we played. So any sort of improvement on that will be extremely welcomed.
And the great thing is I think you're certainly in a much better shape to from an offensive line standpoint than that game. And I think Georgia's not as good up front. As that game, but obviously not as good as a relative term for Georgia. That's still a very good.
They're still pretty good.
They don't have the freaks that they did in 21. That was generational. I don't know who was. No one was beating that team that year except for when Bama did in the SEC championship. But of course, we saw it happen.
That's like Clemson, in 2018 when we won that national championship and the Power Rangers left.
Yeah,
it's like saying, "Oh, well, they're not as good along the defensive line." Like, yeah, that was true, but they were still very good along.
They're still pretty good
in 2019, right?
And Brent Venables did a good job that year of kind of, we weren't as deep, and so he did a good job of scheming around. I mean, he did it. He went to Iowa State and kind of learned the aspects of their. It was like 3-3. It wasn't even really 3. It wasn't even really a 3. It was more like a 3-2-6 type of thing because they played with like 6 DBs at times.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But
But
yeah,
relatively, they're not as good along the defensive front.
But that 2019 defense was I respect them a ton because I think that's probably the weakest defensive line that Clemson has had in the last 10 years, 10, 11 years, and they were still extremely productive. I mean, your starters were what? Xavier Thomas, Justin Foster, you had Niles Pinckney in there, Jordan Williams. I'm kind of thinking of some of the names, but there wasn't a whole lot of KJ Henry. And he was still kind of developing.
He was still young. Yeah, he wasn't really playing, but he was
there.
Then. Yeah.
So I mean that was not not one of our best defensive line. Man, Justin Foster. I haven't thought about him in a long time. I feel. His story was so sad because COVID basically ruined his chances of playing in the league.
Yeah, ended his career basically.
Yeah, but I think from what I heard, he's doing well. I think he wanted to open a trucking business. I think he's on his way to doing that.
Right, good for him, man.
So, that's a cool little aside story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that that defense that 2019 defense. They weren't good enough to beat LSU, but they did the job that year. They were like top 10, top 5 in most categories that year, with certainly a less than standard defensive line for what Clemson was used to. Byron says, I'm tired of the excuses from Kirby saying they're doing everything they can. You can get as many speakers as you want, but the head coach doesn't show he ain't going to put up with it. It won't stop. I don't want to, pile on Kirby, but, I do think it would be very naive to think that, there's not a problem there. Yeah. I think the racing stuff, I think that's, it's not exclusive to Georgia, but there's certainly a lot about it that's extraordinary about kind of what's going on there. And
it's just, I don't like an isolated incident of what's happened at Georgia is not a big deal, right? Like young people that come into money that have never had money, they buy cars that are really fast. And when you buy a fast car, what do you want to do? You want to drive it fast.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Especially when you're not in these big cities, like you're in these college towns, they have there's lots of free roads and like
rural areas
cars
on the road.
Yeah.
You want to be like, let's see what this thing's got, right? So you understand it in a vacuum, right? Mm-hmm. Isolated incidents. But, to your point, when you look at the totality of what's happening at Georgia and what has happened over the a few seasons, 2-3 years, whatever it is, you certainly start to, raise your eyebrow and be like, there's obviously something deeper going on here.
Yeah.
And, to Byron Davis' point, like, not to pile on Kirby, but at the end of the day, buck stops with you, right?
Yeah.
And you got to get that kind of stuff under control because it's obviously become a problem for Georgia. Because the isolated incidents are happening far too frequent for them to just be an isolated incident of, an 18, 19, 20-year-old speeding. Because in a vacuum, who really cares about that incident, right? But when you look at the totality and some of the unfortunate things that have happened, with individuals losing their lives,
especially,
it becomes far more serious and looks a bit more troubling. If you're a Georgia fan, I would be like, what is going on, man? Like, why can't we get this under control? Why does this keep happening? Like, if I was a Georgia fan, I would be tired of opening, whatever sports website you go to and seeing another Georgia player, blah, 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 traffic related incident, right? Like, I'd be sick of seeing it at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they are. So you got to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah,
I don't know the answers. I'm not in that program every day. I don't know what they have done or what they're going to do, but
The message isn't getting home. Yeah, that's
whatever you're doing currently is not working. So you got to change it up. And I don't know what Kirby has done or what he said or what discipline, because most college football coaches, they keep discipline internal. So even when they discipline players, they don't talk about it with the media. It's
right.
Hey, they're having, we're doing team discipline. That's as much as you're going to get. And I'm not saying they should tell us what they're doing, but whatever they're doing, it's not working. So
we'll see how that plays out. Brandon says it'll be hard to see a wide receiver break 1,000 yards through the deep wide receiver room and O-line. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. Like, if Clemson does, it would be nice to have an 1,000-yard receiver because you haven't had one in 4 years. But I think like it's just as important that you have a lot of guys that are productive and making plays. And if that means none of them reach 1,000, so be it. I'm perfectly fine with that, because it's a great milestone individually, but it doesn't mean that much as far as what success the team had. So I'm with you. Ronald says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much improvement will the offensive line make this year due to the new offensive line coach? That's a good question. A scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to say I'm feeling a 6 or a 7.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, I think that's the right range. I think you're going to see significant improvement, but I don't think that significant improvement from last year, is still doesn't mean that they're going to be like an elite, Joe Moore winning offensive line.
Right.
But I think they have the opportunity to be really good and be one of the better lines in the ACC. And so if you can get that kind of play, especially from your higher end players, your Blake Millers, your Walker Parks, Tristan Lay, if those guys, like, you can get that, and of course Ryan Linthicum at center, that would be, if you can get play out of him, a great play out of him, and not have to rely on the younger guy, that would be great. Then this offensive line looks really, really good and on paper, and they certainly have the bodies to do it. And, individually, these guys are extremely talented, but offensive line is, football is a team sport, but playing offensive line is a team sport within the team sport.
Right.
It takes a cohesive offensive line. It takes a lot more than just being really good, stacking 5 really talented individuals together. Like they have to be in sync with each other. They have to have good communication. They have to all have understanding of what their assignments are and what each other's assignments are. It's, like I said, it is a team sport within the team sport. And it's something that, just doesn't get talked about a ton, but gets, at least when things are going well. But when it's negative, when things aren't going well, it's a common scapegoat for a lot of problems. So, it's a very thankless position in a lot of ways, but it takes so much work to be good, to have a really good offensive line. But the good thing is you brought in a guy who knows what it takes.
He understands, and he's done it time and time again. And he's produced elite level offensive line groups, not just individual players, but groups multiple times at different universities. So you can rest assured that the right guy has been hired to do it. But it's not going to be a wave of the wand, type of deal. It's not going to be magically turned around just because Matt Luke walks in the room, right? A lot of what you're talking about, Jordan, the chemistry and all of that echoes even more when you're in a Garrett Riley system, when they do the pulls and the movement along the offensive line and getting linemen out running and blocking on the perimeter and stuff like that. Like, it becomes that much more important that it's a cohesive unit, right? And I think for this season, we need to kind of set parameters for what improvement on the offensive line looks like, right? And to me, that kind of is, what would we mark as success, right? To me, it's we don't have the musical chairs that we've had the past 3 seasons along the offensive line, where at no particular game do you know which 5 starters are going to roll out there, right? I think that's important. And I think just the ability to execute what Garrett Riley is asking them to do. If those 2 things happen this season, excuse me, I think you can mark it as a very improved offensive line around that 6 range that we're talking about, and a success as far as the Matt Luke year 1. Now, year 2, obviously going to expect much more improvement. But year 1, just being able to execute what Garrett Riley wants them to execute. Because I don't know if people remember, last season we had to switch back to zone blocking because the offensive line couldn't do what Garrett Riley was asking them to do.
Yep.
Which is why a lot of people were like, oh, Garrett Riley came to Clemson to run Clemson's offense, to run Dabo Swinney's offense, not Garrett Riley's offense. No, if you notice, they had to switch because what he was asking to do wasn't being executed. And at the end of the day, the goal is to win games. So if we got to go backwards to win a game, that's what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
So be able to execute the offense, one, and no musical chairs for the offensive line.
Yep. And as you mentioned, the zone block. I mean, that was a big reason why you beat Notre Dame, was you kind of took them off guard because they weren't really prepared for that, and a big reason why Phil Maffa had a big day. But that's not ideally. That's not what this team's identity wanted to be and what they plan to be this year.
Yeah, 40 carries.
Yeah,
I don't think Notre Dame saw that coming at all.
No, they did not.
None of us did, to be completely transparent.
All right, let's do a few more. Ben asks, Clemson football has a graduation rate. Oh my goodness, graduation rate. Wow. I've never struggled to say that before, but until now, of 99% since 2016. Thoughts? I mean, it's just another example of what Clemson is about and what Dabo himself has been about with running this program. I mean, which is why I don't understand why people think he's fake. Like he talks about, it's like, oh, I want my guys to graduate, and we value our guys getting their degrees, and we commit to these guys, and we want to see them finish. And if they want to go elsewhere to play, we'll help you, but we want you to get your degree first, ideally. And so, and that's kind of the culture that he's established since he's been the head coach, and that's just a testament to what they've committed to. And because again, as talented as Clemson's roster has been, like most of those guys don't play in the NFL, and if they do, an even more larger percentage of them don't play very long, to where they have enough money to just say they're set for life. Very few football players get that opportunity. So having your degree and having, and also the network of opportunities that you get with the Paul Journey program and all of that, that's all tied into it as well. And so it's like Dabo, you can say he's corny, and he certainly is in a lot of aspects, and he's very goofy and all that, and he's a very interesting personality, but he practices what he preaches. Like I think that's all you can really ask for. I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, but he is about it. So I think that's just another example.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, you may not agree with him, but you have to respect him, because look, he practiced what he preaches, like you said, and it is important for all the reasons that you laid out. A lot of these guys are really talented and athletic and great football players. They're never going to the NFL. And even if they do get a shot to be in training camp or make it on a practice squad or whatever the case may be, they're not really going to make a living, at least long term, at the NFL. So it'd be nice to have a degree and connections and an alumni base that you could go back to and lean on and be like, hey, remember me? I played for Clemson. I'm a Clemson graduate. And then suddenly all these opportunities are opened up to you because you came from a place like Clemson where they have an alumni base and, they're business owners and, all these people with different opportunities and connections because of, who you're associated with that Clemson degree. And that goes for other universities out there as well.
Yeah. And,
you know,
and
flash that Clemson degree or that Clemson ring and, suddenly doors start opening for you.
Absolutely. Like they said, I mean, it's every bit as much about, who as what when it comes to, your postgraduate.
Look, I can speak from 100% experience in my life that it's not always about what you know, it's who you know. I've gotten opportunities in my life that I would have never gotten if I didn't know the people that I knew, and I didn't do a good job when I didn't know that people were watching me, right? And then I've gotten calls later like, hey, I got this opportunity all because when I worked around them and they saw me, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So mental note. And then I get an opportunity, a year, 2 years down the road because of what I did then. So it really does. Networking is a huge thing. And if nothing else, college is networking and getting, rubbing elbows with people that have opportunities that could help you in the future.
Yep, absolutely. So it's something to be proud of. And I know fans we love the football program and we want it to be successful. And some fans will roll their eyes at the graduation rates and they don't care all that much. And I mean, I think that's fine, but it does play a significant role in, how the program is perceived and the opportunities that these players get. And it is a valuable recruiting tool, especially for parents. Like, the kids may not be thinking so much about the degree, but the parents, when you're talking to these 16, 17-year-olds and their families, and you're talking about, hey, when you come here, we're going to make sure we're going to give you the resources you need to be successful, not just on the field, but off the field and in the books. And we want you to have those opportunities. Because like we said, not everybody gets to play in the NFL. That's very appealing to a lot of families still to this day, even in the NIL era where people are dropping bags. That still matters to people.
Yeah.
It is a very valuable recruiting tool. All right, couple more. Chase asks, how confident are you with Linthicum starting at center? More confident than I was probably 3 or 4 months ago. I think he's done. I think he's done a lot to kind of transform himself, and he looks the part of a starting center now.
Yeah.
Visually, you got to see it on the field. But that was my thing with him was like, man, he's not. He doesn't look all that impressive compared to some of the other guys in the room, and but I think he's very noticeably different than he was when he was a freshman to, even last season. He's done a lot. So I'm not like 100% like on like, oh, Ryan Linthicum is the guy and we're going to be great with him. But I think I feel a lot better, more comfortable with that than I was a few months ago, for sure.
Yeah, look, I'm fairly confident at him starting center, at least game one. I think that's going to happen. Yeah. But to your point about him putting in the work and changing his body and stuff like that, I mean, you look at him as early as, this spring practice. I wasn't super impressed with where he was at physically there either. I think he still needed a lot of work. And it sounds like, judging from what the coaching staff said in the Clemson media day, that he has put in that work. According to Matt Luke, he has put in that work. And, if the game was played today, Ryan Linthicum would obviously run out there and be the starting center. And I think he was recruited to eventually take over this spot. He was a highly recruited guy, a guy with a lot of talent. He just needed to get his body in a better spot where he can compete consistently, play in and play out, right? And if he's truly there, I think, the sky's really the limit for Ryan Lithicum. I think he's always had the talent. It's just the dedication to nutrition and the working out and keeping your body in a place where you can physically perform, not only for an entire game, but an entire season. And that really is still the question with him, right? Where is he at? How much better shape has he got into? What's he going to look like in fall camp? Because I promise you, Harris Sewell is right there. And he will 100%, in my mind, be pushing Ryan Lithicum and keeping him accountable because, make no mistake, I think Harris Sewell is a player that could absolutely step in and take his place if Ryan Lithicum underperforms or doesn't do what he needs to do to stay in the position that he's been given to this point. So,
right. And
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, so I was just saying that, and I've always been of the mindset that, and I've talked about it. If Harris Sewell is, if it's anywhere close, you start the younger guy. But if Linthicum does create that separation in fall, and he becomes the guy, if he's the guy, I feel better about that now than I did a few months ago. So I think there's a real pathway there where Clemson can be successful, and I wasn't so sure about that a little while ago. Intelligent Savage 629. He says the safety tear is just seeing the kid is a Clemson Tiger in 2025, flipping him from the Georgia Bulldogs. What do you guys think of the player? One of my favorite players in the class. I'm really excited about him. Elite speed, presents a lot of positional versatility. I think he could play nickel. I think he could grow to play outside. I think Clemson got a stud. In all honesty, I think they got them one, and I think Georgia is going to be. They're going to look down the line and it's going to be one of those. It's like, man, I wish he didn't end up there. Wish we had been able to hold on to him. He's really good. He's really talented, and he's only continued to rise up the ranks. I think the recruiting services have caught on to how good he is at this point. So it wouldn't surprise me down the line if he was closer to a top 50 kid. I think he's one of the best players in the class. So I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, look, absolute one of the gems of the class. Super excited, man.
Yeah.
And it's always nice when you can beat out the Georgia Bulldogs for a recruit.
Yeah.
A lot easier said than done.
John asks, why do experts say Miami is more talented than Clemson this year? There's a lot that doesn't make sense. Simply because they use the portal. I still think, on paper, Clemson has the more talented roster, but Miami has the shiny new. It's like the shiny new toys philosophy. Like they have the names that they brought in through the portal. They have some guys that they recruited that are talented as well, but bringing in Cam Ward certainly has elevated them in that discussion, and the experience they bring back on the offensive line, I think is definitely worth noting for sure. They bring back they bring back most of their receivers. So there's a lot expected of them in year 3 of Mario Cristobal, and they're just kind of expecting that natural progression.
Yeah,
to where they finally kind of break out. With Miami, I'm always believe it until I'll believe it when I see it. But I think they are. They are a really talented roster, and it's a lot closer than it was, than it used to be. But I don't get down with the fact that Miami is the more talented roster.
Yeah.
But they've closed the gap for sure. I
don't know that I would go as far to say as they're more talented, but to your point, they've obviously closed the gap, and that has mainly to do with the transfer portal. And like it or hate it or think it's fair or unfair, there's just a narrative out there about Clemson that Clemson's in the decline. A lot of it has to do with the media and their coverage of Clemson's unwillingness or to not use the transfer portal and not bringing in transfer portal players. So there's an obvious kind of hit against Clemson because they don't use a transfer portal. But
right.
I think if you lined up the rosters top to bottom and didn't pay attention to who was a transfer and who was a high school recruit that had been on the roster, I think Clemson probably still has a slight edge over Miami. But again, I don't think it matters. Look, the game's got to be played on the field, regardless of who the media says has a more talented roster or less talented roster. At the end of the day, we'll see if we happen to meet them in the ACC championship game. Game's got to be played on the field. Nobody cares who wins it on paper.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's a good place to close us off. We've eclipsed the 2.5 hour mark, so that's kind of where we like to.
Yeah, it's one of our longer shows in a while. But yeah, 2.5. I think we'll go ahead and leave it there, guys. Thank you guys so much for showing up. We still got 25 people hanging out with us in the live chat. Remember, if you have not already, again, hit that like button on your way out. Help us out. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends about the channel, guys. Tell your friends about the All In Show. Me and Jordan are right here every Friday night, 5:30, talking about Clemson football, talking about college football. And again, we chop it up with you guys in the comment section every single show. So invite your friends in, invite your fellow college football fans in, and help us grow the channel that we have here. Every comment, every like, every communication that we have with you guys is greatly appreciated. Even the trash talk, we welcome that as well. So bring the other fan bases in. We enjoy having people in here that are not just Clemson fans. So
I see them chopping it up with New King God, who's been
I see him in there talking that Miami trash in the comment section. I like it.
Yeah, he's been here before, so we always appreciate him.
Yeah, he's a regular on here. I like it. Hopefully, we'll get to meet Miami this year. And
that'd be. Hopefully, it's more competitive than the last time those two teams met in Charlotte. That was
for sure.
Mark Richt kicking that field goal on 4th and short to escape the shutout was one of the saddest things I've ever seen.
That was so sad. That was so sad.
Man, Kelly Bryant had himself a day. That was he had a great game.
He did. Definitely a highlight of one of the highlights of his career for sure. Yeah. But all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Remember, we'll be right back here next Friday, 5:30 p.m. But until then, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.